So what we just heard what was the song Respect from Aretha Franklin, who is the Queen of Soul and who took an existing song and infused it with such passion that it became a universal rallying cry for the civil rights and feminist movements. And that is how I would like to welcome you to this Call to Europe special edition of our Feminist Culture Café series, which periodically delves into the intersection of culture and women in their fullest diversity. My name is LAETICIA THISSEN, and as a FEPS Gender Equality Policy Advisor, it is my greatest honor to moderate this session. FEPS Call to Europe brings together experts, civil society, and policymakers to form jointly a melting pot of progressive ideas contributing to FEPS' mission of bridging the social gaps. As you may already know, this year we are marking the 10th anniversary of this flagship event. Therefore, we set the bar even higher by transforming it into a virtual festival. And that is precisely why we could not help but inviting ourselves with our Feminist Culture Café into your living room. And perhaps at this time of the day, not just for feminist coffee. So even just get your favorite drink as we're about to kick off this session. And you may think that we have been inspired by the Eurovision Song Contest that took place recently by picking up such an issue that is far too often overlooked. But COVID-19 also exacerbated many and numerous existing gaps. Some very old, others were rediscovered, but the resulting social fracture particularly affected two closely intertwined domains, and that is culture and gender equality. Many of you will now be familiar with the term she-cession, which was called to describe how COVID-19 took a much bigger toll on women economically and domestically, thereby blurring even further the line between formal work and the rest, which has a major impact on how women can cope with multiple overlapping spheres of life. But as COVID-19 also demonstrated, women have been disproportionately affected by the shock that was brought by the pandemic due to the high feminization of the sector. The perfect example is, of course, the care sector, employing an overwhelming majority of women occupied in highly undervalued and underpaid conditions, falling in sharp contrast with their essential role in society. So the gender dimension is crucial when we speak about closing the social gaps, and it is being addressed transversely throughout most of our other Call to Europe sessions throughout these 3 days. But today, and as opposed to previous crises, women were also among those whose jobs were suddenly put to a halt to the greatest extent. We have tourism, we have self-care. Who of us wasn't suddenly feeling the bad absence of the hairdressers, for instance? We have the service-oriented activities, salesperson, textile industries. All of these sectors have suffered from the pandemic and are highly feminized. And last but not least, this also applies to culture and arts. And that is precisely what we will concentrate on today. In fact, culture has been painfully absent from our lives in those long months of lockdown. And to a great extent, it is until now. Just like the care sector, it represents another equally feminized, equally essential, though equally precarious and underrated profession. In fact, it is quite known that women often perform a double shift, meaning that once they leave their formal remunerated work, most of the unpaid care duties still lie on their shoulders. Well, what is perhaps less well known, however, is that female artists often perform triple shifts, as their work in the cultural industry is often so precarious that they very often need to accumulate other additional jobs simply to stay afloat. So besides the widespread horizontal segregation in the cultural sector, what we also see is that women have even greater difficulty in breaking the glass ceiling. So all these issues that we deal with in this session, together with our honorable set of speakers, will be addressed. But before I go on introducing them to you, I would like to give the floor to our Vice President, ZITA GURMAI, who is also the President of PES Women and a staunch advocate for women's rights. So she could not be in a better position to deliver this introductory remark. ZITA, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a great privilege to see so many amazing women in leading position. And actually, I can tell you, Sonja, that I have a lovely memory of my youth in Denmark, spending summers in Jutland. And of course, ALICIA, who is a key fighter, not as leader of the Young European Socialists, but of course as an excellent member of European Parliament. And of course, LAETICIA, who I believe is not only doing an excellent job, who is responsible not only for women's rights and gender equality, but she is a very stable connection of PS Women. So we work together within the executive, and I really, really admire the work that she does within our FEPS team as well. And of course, okay, very short intro. Yes, I'm the Vice President of FEPS, the longest standing Vice President since the beginning, and presiding the European Socialist Party Women Organization. But at the same time, I'm coming from Hungary, I'm coming from Urbanistan, and I'm Vice President of my party and Deputy Group Leader of the Socialists in the Parliament. Anyway, so I am telling you that this is not the first time that we work together with LAETICIA and my amazing PS Women team. But of course, we already had a Feminist Culture Café during the S&D week last November in 2020. So we really thought, you know, what is the format? We cannot see you. I miss you so much. And of course, in the virtual sphere, what we can say, how important, you know, to get this virus over, which has been affected a lot of women the last long years. And of course, it is also great format for spotlighting women's achievement, reaching outside the policy bubble, and of course, getting absolutely new impulses and perspective on feminism. And I just wanted to let you know how important this song has been. You feel in your DNS, you know, feminism in your DNS. That's what I can say. And of course, ahead of this year, I asked what is my call? That is the request. What is my call to Europe would be this year? And I think there is only one thing I can tell you. Make women count. Make women count. Because we have totally seen what happened during the crisis. And of course, her count in all their diversity was the focus of Women International Women's Day campaign this March. And it is a call that needs to be heard over and over again. And this is again a great occasion to do it. Why women need to make her count? Of course, we need to talk about the political and economic decision making in the boardroom, in the home, and of course, on the front line of the pandemic. You have seen so many amazing women. I can thank you again, the great job they did. Make their work count on equal to men. Make their effort during the pandemic count in the priority of the recovery. Make their amazing women voices, ideas and experience counted. And in the year of 2021, we are recovering from a pandemic which has increased gender gaps and worsened inequality. You feel on your own skin. Gender equality, the gender pay gap is worse. So it means that it is measurable, you know, what happened during the crisis. But many countries are still treating women's rights as a second-hand concern. I don't have to tell you that this is the country where I am coming from. And it is time to make gender equality the center of European recovery policies. I believe culture has a very important role to play when it comes to making women count in a modern post-COVID Europe. From the first baby steps in the European feminism of 100 years to the present day, culture has been a space for women to express their perspective on the world, to question their societies, and to challenge the status quo. Culture brings a diverse storytelling about women's experience to the table, and more importantly, can inform, teach and educate. Yes, that's us women who do the education. We can safely say that without women's cultural expression, feminism as a movement cannot function. Feminist culture refreshes political and social debate, creates bonds of sisterhood, and teaches women that we are not alone in that fight. And as I already told you that I have a beautiful country but an awful government, I must underline the importance of culture, especially women artists who have played across the decades. And also today, when it comes to fighting back against the anti-feminist and anti-democratic conservative backlash, which is still growing in Europe. We need to stop them. We need everybody on the board. And we are going to have the future of Europe debate. We cannot let the Christian Democrats come. So women line up for action. This is what I strongly believe. And as I am sure that you are going to discuss further during the Culture Café today, the culture sector has suffered economically during the pandemic. You have friends, family friends, who can tell you how difficult their life has been. But women artists have also found new ways of expressing themselves and reaching new audience. But we need to help them. Female cultural creators have helped create solidarity, and solidarity is so important, is so crucial, and new virtual communities during the lockdown. Surfing on the Me Too and the Time's Up outcry against sexism in Hollywood, as well as in the European film and art world, we are seeing more and more women of color and other minority backgrounds make their marks. I'm very, very proud of them. But still, too few women in the arts are reaching to the top position, and too few are receiving the economic and critical recognition they deserve. We should take care of them. Make her count. Too often it is the male cultural creators who wield the most influence and power. Unfortunately, as with many economic sectors where women are the main consumers and creators, investment in women-led culture risk being deprioritized in the post-COVID-19 recovery process. This, I believe, would be a great mistake. Help me to make not to happen. Not only is a rich cultural space as a so-called precondition for well-functioning democracies, it is absolutely necessary if we want to create a society of well-being, a society where ordinary people and the planet, non-profit, are at the center of our feminist economy. And I can tell you that PES Women did an amazing booklet on feminist economy. I'm sure that you will find it. We have an amazing feminist newsletter. And of course, if we want to build back better culture, and especially culture-created women in all their diversity, must be counted and valuable, starting with how the EU recovery funds are spent at national level. But it's up to us, national parliamentarians, but the European Parliament has a great eye to check it. So adding to my overall call to Europe to make her count this year, I want to call on political and economic decision makers to make her culture count. Invest in culture, but not just culture by men, but equally or more so by women in all diversity, as I already told. Just like gender equality must not be seen as an add-on to be dealt with once the economy is up and running again. So must culture be integrated into our plans for a better future from day one. A film is not just moving picture. I had a doctorate on cartoons, by the way, and I think it's so important how you feel. What was the way that it has been proceeded? A painting is more than paint on canvas. Feminist culture is community. It's a super value. It is a protest, and it is in progress. So I believe that you are super lucky to have LAETICIA, SONJA, and ALICIA on the board. And I really hope that your diversity, your values are going to push to be pushed that make her culture. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Zita, for setting the scene with your insightful and inspiring remarks. You're, of course, very welcome to stay with us as long as you want and as much as your agenda allows, because I know that you also have other commitments in your capacity of member of the parliament in Hungary. But thank you once again for this strong kick-off contribution, Zita. And on this note, let me finally introduce you to our speakers, which I could not be prouder to introduce to you. First of all, I have to mention that Delphine HOUBA was with us just a few seconds ago, but unfortunately she had some technical issues, and so she promised to me that she will send us a video right now that she's making at the moment, so I'll be sharing it with you later on. But let me nevertheless introduce you to her, because she has, I'm sure, prepared to this session. So she's the elderly woman of Brussels for culture and tourism and big events, and as such, as we marked the Jubilee edition, it is of course for us a great pleasure to welcome back some of our most committed and memorable speakers of previous Call to Europe editions, and she's one of those. She certainly belongs to our Feminist Culture Café clubs, not only because she describes herself as a music, reading and exhibition lover, but also because she's committed to this issue in her everyday life. And so we will be hearing from her later on. But let me now take you with our next speaker, the second speaker, to the Balearic Islands in Spain, and with ALICIA Holmes. Very early on, you did not hesitate to break all sorts of glass ceilings, being elected as member of the European Parliament, part of the SD delegation since May 2019, before becoming the president of the Young European Socialists, one of the most important youth political organizations in Europe. You're also a member of PSOE, the Young Socialists of the Balearic Islands, I will manage, and you're an ex officio member of FEPS Bureau. And so as such, you've been an active member and contributor to FEPS activities in multiple ways. And yourself as an MEP, you also are a member of the Committee of the Employment and Social Affairs. So welcome to you, ALICIA.
Thanks a lot, LAETICIA. It's a pleasure to be here with us and with this team of speakers that I'm really happy to be with them. Just an introduction, I think that we say that politics is the art of changing things. And we progressives want to make a world a better place for us. It means that our societies are socially fair. Zita was mentioning it, and I think I totally agree with you, Zita, on that point. I think that our aim is to diminish inequalities between human beings, as well as we are all equal. We should have equal opportunities and to have a good life and the life that we choose to have. So we fight for equality and freedom for all human beings, and this is one of the priorities that we have as a political family. So today it's true that certain collectives face greater obstacles to this ideal that we seek. Their gender, their origin, or their sexual orientations condition some people's economic situation, and we cannot allow it. It happened across societies and across economic sectors, but in the last decades, we women have revolted against this structural oppression. Today, we are more visible than ever, but it's still a lot to do in that sense. And we make our disadvantages visible, as the gender pay gap, woman leadership. Okay, goodbye, Zita. To continue, as I said, today we make more visible than ever to make our disadvantages visible, as the gender pay gap, as the woman leadership, the right to conciliate or sexual harassment are symptoms of the gender inequality that are being addressed by many governments in the world, because we women have said enough. So this surge in feminine visibility is very evident in the cultural sector. Maybe it's the sector where it's more visible, in fact. Remember the Me Too movement started in the cinema sector, while in the past For example, writers had to publish under pseudonyms because women were not kind of allowed to write books. Today, we can think of hundreds of famous writers, actresses, or artists. Plus, many of them have thousands of followers whom they can influence, and some of them do it to spread feminist views. So, in a way, women in the cultural sector are leading the fight of feminism around the world. And that's why progressive parties should care a lot about culture and feminism, because feminism is many times lead from culture. So we have to take good care of culture for it to thrive in good conditions, not in the precarious conditions that many cultural workers have today. So we need to keep fighting. We'll keep pushing for all of these ideas. And hopefully, in the end, I mean, as I said, there is a lot that has been done, but there is still much to do. So we will keep going in this line, and hopefully we will have a better place and a better world for all the women in the world.
Thank you very much, Alicia, for this immediately and straight away kickoff into the discussion. It's glad to see the enthusiasm for the topic, but also I would like to now take the occasion to introduce you to our last speaker, who is Sonja Marie Jensen. You are representative, or you come from Denmark, and you are actually representing women in local governments. We know that women are still underrepresented in decision-making and leadership positions in all spheres of life, but the situation in local and regional governments is especially bad, with only 15% of local mayors being women. So we're actually quite lucky to have one of the very few amongst us. As you arrived to your position as the mayor of Nyborg, a city in central Denmark, located on the island on the Funen. At a fairly young age. You've also been a school teacher. You've been since 2015 the member of the city council, the chairperson of the employment committee and the integration council of your municipality, and you've been granted the Social Democracy's Weekend Award for the fight against sexism in politics. So welcome to you as well.
Thank you so much. I am really, really happy to be here as well. And thank you for the very nice introductions from both ALICIA and ZITA. That was really inspiring. I am, though not the mayor yet, but I'm running for the position as a mayor in my city council. And the election is this fall. So hopefully I will become the mayor in a short amount of time. And actually, I would be the first female mayor in my local government. We have never had any female mayors in Nyborg, where I am at the moment political elected. So that will be really, really interesting, and I hope I will succeed on that point. I'm very excited to be in this debate. I think it's really, really interesting to talk about especially the inequality we see in the cultural difference, in the different cultural institutions, and also the different industries we actually see around the whole cultural aspect. I think to start with the whole debate about what is inequality and what can we do about the whole gender thing, I think Alicia set the scene pretty well, but the inequality regarding gender is also really the most unfair and unreasonable inequality you can have, because you cannot just decide to change your sex, or you cannot just decide, oh, I want to be a man, because that will probably make my life in politics much easier. The gender you have is just something you cannot do anything about, which makes it, for me, one of the most unreasonable measures you can look at, and you can be treated different because of your sex. I also think if we look in the cultural industry, I think one of the reasons that it's very hard and very challenged because of the whole pandemic, but also because of the value we look at when we talk about culture. The value of labor or employment in the cultural industry is not as much worth as if we talk about manufacturing job or transportation jobs or teaching jobs. It's always like there is like this underlying talks that, oh, it's just a hobby and you should be glad you can live out of your hobby, which is not really true, because the artists we have in books or movies or songwriters, they are really, really important to set some of the important debates we have in the society. And if we don't make sure to invest in cultural, different parts of the culture and artists, we won't be able to have the possibility of hearing these important voices. And I think we would be a very, very poor society if we don't prioritize the cultural, both female and male, but especially females, because they are underrepresented in cultural as well as leadership and political leadership.
In fact, perhaps I would like to pick you up on what you just said, because indeed it is also very much linked to the fact that it is a sector that is not valued enough for the actual contribution that it makes to society. And not only are the cultural and creative sectors economic drivers and a source of employment for many, but this is especially the case for women and young people who are overrepresented in the field, as we already said now multiple times. So what actually accounts for this high level of feminization in the sector?
I think one of the interesting part is that if we only think that the different industries should be like driven on behalf of the investments from the outside, or how many people want to read your book or go to the theater or listen to your song, I think we will lose a lot of really, really talented artists all around the world, and also local where I'm from. This is why I think the politicians, we should really invest in some of the cultural aspects. We should prioritize to say, okay, cultural aspects are really, really important for society. It's really, really important that we have good educations for our writers. It's really, really good that we have educations for musicians or artists who makes movie or whatever. So I think it starts by actually making sure that we have good educations, that we have representation of females in the whole literature we present in the schools. We don't have any equality in that. That is almost only males who are represented in the literature we present to our kids in the school. And I think that's a failure, even though many teachers are actually females. And then we still fail on the whole representation of what do we present for the kids.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps also linking on what you just said, and here I'm looking at ALICIA, because at the time when all countries are currently working towards crafting responses to this unprecedented crisis, how can we actually make sure that we become better advocates for women, female artists included, not to be left behind, and particularly if we think of the case of women of color, queer artists, those with a handicap, to cite just a few?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, LAETICIA, because in the beginning of the pandemic, some said that this crisis affected us, to all of us equally. And today, we will all agree that this is not true. Those most affected have been those with a more precarious situation before it erupted. And those sectors with worse working conditions are those where more jobs have been lost. So the cultural sector have been one of them. And precisely in the cultural sector, women are overrepresented. And this is great news. And as I said before, enables us to have a very visible feminist world leaders. However, I don't find it a coincidence that a sector with precarious working conditions is a sector more accessible for women, while those sectors with better salaries, such as technology or finance, are filled by men. So this is clearly because our society does not give a cultural sector the importance that it deserves. So we do not treat it as an economic sector that it is. And in fact, the cultural and creative industries represent about the 5% of the European Union GDP. That is not a low number. So it's a sector that creates growth and jobs, and policymakers should give it the same importance as they give to other sectors. If we did, many women could have much better working conditions. So we have to keep working on that direction, because all sectors of society and of economy are important and all deserve same rights and conditions. And as you said, women, particularly women of color, queer artists, or those one who has a handicap, are the ones that were suffering the most all these things. So we need to keep in the fight, as I said before, and hopefully sooner than later we will be able to see a society, a more equal society in this sense.
Indeed. In fact, both culture and women saw themselves dramatically penalized by the crisis in strikingly similar ways. And it is almost all too tempting to make direct connections between the general neglect that is given to culture as an actual prerequisite for human well-being on the one hand, and for women as vital actors of societies across all aspects of life. So perhaps here also, Sonja, to what extent could we locate the deep roots of this unequal treatment with our society's neoliberal approach to politics, placing too much focus on capitalist and profit-driven growth rather than on building truly inclusive, caring, and creative societies?
I think this is like really interesting, and a nice example, which is actually a really sad example, was in Denmark during the beginning of the pandemic. We did like so many financial support stuff for all different sectors in industry. The last one we made support, financial support for was actually for the cultural sector and for the artists who couldn't go out and perform. So I think if we really want to prioritize and show how important it is in the society, we need to step it up, and we need to invest in it. We need to make sure that we acknowledge the value of the cultural sector instead of always treating it like something extra or something nice. It is a really, really important part, and I think as long as we don't acknowledge that, it won't change.
Speaking of concrete action, and you, ALICIA, as a member of the European Parliament, what can the EU actually do to actively support its member states in formulating recovery measures which are truly gender-sensitive and culture-oriented?
Well, thank you for the question, LAETICIA. We all know that despite the progress in the recent years that I have been mentioning, the underrepresentation of women in political and economic decision-making and challenges linked to glass ceiling and pay gap remain a challenge in the EU and its member states. So in some countries, especially the less developed countries, access to culture can still be restricted to certain social groups, with women and girls in particular facing complex barriers to participate in the cultural life. So unequal opportunities for women to share their creativity with audience, glass ceiling, for women to reach management and leadership positions or to participate in the decision-making processes are a strong lessons strong reasons why addressing and tackling the gender norms, attitudes, and also the stereotypes, finding gender equality in the political, economic, social, and yet cultural domains is more important than ever. So keeping these challenges in mind, let's think gender-related issues are not solitary issues that should be treated as isolated facts. We have to integrate the gender perspective in all political scenarios, in all phases of political formulation, and at all levels and sectors. And there are several instruments in place to address these issues, such as the Gender Equality Strategy or the European Pillar of Social Rights. But a gender budgeting approach can make a real difference. So both the recovery plan and the EU budget can be powerful forces for growth and development, and a more gender equal EU would have a strong positive GDP impacts growing over time, a higher level of employment and productivity, and could ensure better working and living conditions for our women across all these sectors. So I think is clear. I mean, there is still a lot to do, but we are keeping improving step by step.
And perhaps also, Sonja, as you're more rooted in local politics, could you give us also some examples of a range of the type of measures that were adopted by local authorities to support cultural workers and institutions?
Yeah, I think there are several things we can actually do, but one of the important things I think we should think about when we make decisions regarding the cultural life in my municipality is that we always demand good labor working conditions for the people who are actually working in the different sets or active in the different organizations around the cultural events in our municipality, but also the fact that maybe we should demand some, not quotes, but at least some kind of equal representation in the different shows, in the different artist representation they do at our cultural places in our municipalities, because almost all culture in a municipality is actually financially supported by the politicians in the local government. And if we support it financially, we can also make some demands, and we can also set some goals on, for example, equality, representation of different genders, sexualities, and so on. And as long as we don't even discuss that in the local governments, we won't move anything. So I think we should start by looking at the small parts and then taking the steps all around where we can do it. In the European Parliament will be great as well. Local governments and at least also the national governments, they should participate here as well.
Thank you very much for your answer, Sonja. And as we are already, unfortunately, nearing the end, I would like to bring the conversation to its conclusion with a final segment about the overall benefits of feminist culture for closing the social gaps. Let's not forget that movies, books, and music, which helped us actually to a great extent to overcome this difficult period. So I would like to ask the two of you to cite one specific example that guided you through this crisis. But before we do this, I will try to, and here I know it's a bit of a risky technical gamble, but I will share the video that DELPHINE HOUBA in the meantime recorded specifically for us. So even if you cannot make it directly, let's hope we can somehow hear her voice nevertheless. So please tell me if you can see the video. No? Trying again. Perhaps I'll just do the entire screen then. Can you see it now? No? Okay. Well, I will perhaps check this with the team in the backstage. But in the meantime, I would perhaps ask Alicia to start with her cultural pick.
Sorry. Yes. Well, during the pandemics, I mean, during the lockdown, actually, we were closed at home during 3 months. 3 large months, and apart from working and cleaning the house and doing the stuff together with my boyfriend, the other thing that we did is buying books and reading a lot. And one of the writers that I really like the most, because I focused, I don't know why, my boyfriend was like, but you can read another kind of books also. But I started buying books about feminism, like a lot of them. And one of the writers that I like the most, it was Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I read the small books that she has that are super easy to read. And it's a good beginning to get engaged with her. And I started with the one that is called "We Should All Be Feminists," and now I'm in with this big one. It's not that small one, but it's called Americana. And what I really like about her is, I talked about her before with Laeticia, is the way she's writing, that is super easy to read her books. And also the story she explains you, because she's a woman that is from Africa, and she explains you the situation that the African women are living there. That most of the things that you see that for them are quite normal, for us could be unbelievable. And she's fighting for changing the minds of these women, in order to make feminism stronger in her region. So I really recommend you to read the books. You can start with the small ones. You can read it in 20 minutes. It's super easy and fast to read, and then you can go to the big ones. But for sure that you all will enjoy it. So I really recommend it.
Yes, in fact, she's actually extremely good at highlighting the intersectional perspective, and how feminism can also mean many things for many people. And Sonja, what is your suggestion?
Well, my suggestion is actually a Danish book, but it's a really, really good book. It's called Argumentations Against Females. And it's kind of a historical book where you are taking through from the first doctor in Denmark, the first female teacher in Denmark, and the whole, whatever they meet, like all their arguments they meet, like they are not allowed to be a teacher, they're not allowed to be a teacher for males, only for females, and so on. And it goes from the beginning of the Danish democracy until today. And it's not just like a historical book you can read and be like, oh, that's interesting. All of it is totally documented, which makes it kind of also really nice to bring on to the debate about female rights, and do we actually have equality, or do we just tell each other that we have equality? So that was the first book I read during the lockdown in Denmark, but I finally got the time to read a lot of books, so I really, really found the whole reading again, which was really nice. And then I painted my apartment, so that was my big thing during the whole pandemic.
Well, it seems you already convinced the audience, because I see in the chat box that people are already asking for the title, so please do feel free to share. And perhaps for my team, is there a possibility we can still share Delphine's video? It seems so. Yes. There's no sound.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, because Delphine's video was so nice. We will just improvise. She deserves it. So give me a second.
Hi, everybody. I am very sorry due to technical problems. I cannot be with you, but so I quickly made this video to be with you and to still participate to this very interesting session. So the question of the place of women in culture and arts is really the same question at the place of women in our society. And when Aretha Franklin claims in 1967 that she deserves RESPCT, it's a revolution, but it shouldn't. Women represent half of the humanity, and that song is about social and economic insecurity of women in our society. So with the COVID crisis, we decided in Brussels to launch a kind of a Brussels New Deal, inspired of what the President Roosevelt did in the US in the 30s, just to support culture and arts. And we really did an immediate and direct support to artists and also to the other professionals of the cultural and event sector. We also gave support to a food bank, especially set up for artists. We also brought culture to our hospitals to support the medical teams, to support the patients. And we are also about to launch in Brussels, capital of Europe, Feminist Festival, which is going to be very, very nice, and also with a long-term work with our cultural venues to make sure that women have the place they deserve as staff, as artists, and also as public. So my call for Europe is definitely a feminist Europe, and I hope to see you soon in Brussels or everywhere in the world. Take care. Bye.
Well, thank you, Maria, for sharing it. It was clearly worth it. So it was at least we got a little glimpse of Delphine's voice, and it seems also that this brings us to the end of today's session. On this note, I would like to wholeheartedly thank our fantastic speakers, helping us to paint a clear picture on how feminism and culture are a centerpiece in crafting an inclusive and diverse Europe. The COVID-19 crisis pandemic namely had devastating effect on the cultural and creative sectors, profoundly affecting the livelihood of artists and cultural professionals. Women hold a higher proportion in precarious jobs in arts and in the culture sector, as you have discussed, and particularly they are vulnerable to social and economic insecurity. But on the bright side, you also demonstrated how culture and arts constitute extremely powerful tools to foster women's rights and share common experiences. And even if some may argue that there are fewer female artists, it is not because they are not there, but simply because the powers in place have not been celebrating them. So the discussion brought to light issues that connect us deeply as human beings, particularly during those all too socially distanced times, thanks to culture and gender equality. Multiple inequalities affect the cultural sector, and that is precisely why we as progressives, we should never dismiss this seemingly marginal domain, which is so crucial to bring people together. So if you enjoyed following the discussion, do not hesitate to share your impressions on social media, tagging FEPS, using the hashtag Call to Europe, and we will keep up the discussion. Now, if you're curious for more, please make sure to stay with us by joining the next session, moderated by my colleague David Rinaldi, starting at 8:30 tonight for the night old session on progressives to build back better.